Hello and welcome to today's class. In the last class, we were studying about infectious diseases. Diseases that spread from an individual to another individual directly or indirectly are known as infectious diseases. They are caused by various infectious agents such as bacteria, virus, protozoa and fungi. Now, as I told you earlier, infectious diseases are transmitted from one person to another person. So let us see how these infectious diseases are spread. Spread of infectious disease. There are many agents that are responsible for spreading infectious diseases. Let us discuss them one by one. First is through air. Okay, through air. There are some diseases that spread through air. Okay, so what are those diseases? Diseases like tuberculosis, okay, tuberculosis, common cold, influenza, chicken pox, measles, etc. spread through air. Okay, so these diseases which spread through air are known as airborne diseases. These diseases are known as airborne diseases. The diseases which spread through air. Okay, and how are these diseases spread through air? Is that when a person sneezes or coughs, then the droplets are released into the air, and when we inhale that droplets, then we get that disease. Okay, so it is spread by inhalation. Okay, inhalation of droplets expelled through cough and sputum of an infected person. So when a person, let us take the example of common cold. Okay, when a person is infected from common cold, then that person sneezes and coughs, and that releases the virus into the air, and then when we inhale that air, we also get infected from common cold. Okay, so this is through air. Next agent that spreads infectious disease is through contaminated food and water. Okay. Contaminated food and water. Okay. Diseases like cholera, hepatitis A and diarrhea spread through contaminated food and water. Contaminated means contaminated. Okay, contaminated food and water. Contaminated means that is made impure by us adding certain poisonous substances. Here in this case, it is contaminated means it is made impure by presence of certain infectious agents. Okay, so spread through contaminated food and water. Okay, these diseases are known as foodborne diseases. These diseases are known as foodborne diseases. Okay. So sometimes the food that we eat, the water that we drink, it is infected with certain infectious agents. So when we eat that food or when we drink that water, then we become infected with diseases, and those diseases are food-borne diseases. Just like the examples given, like diarrhea, okay, hepatitis A, cholera, all these are foodborne diseases. Okay, disease causing organisms and pollutants also cause these foodborne diseases. Okay, because pollutants in the form of chemicals, they enter the human body easily. In the form of chemicals enter the human body easily through drinks and food. Okay, so through drinks and food. So when we consume that food, then we become infected with a number of diseases. Now third is through vectors. We discussed about vectors, briefly about vectors in the previous class. So vectors, as you know, are disease causing. These actually are not disease causing, but they transmit disease from an infected person to a healthy person. So these are essentially, what are they? They are animals or insects. Many animals and insects spread diseases from an infected person, infected person to a healthy person. Okay, healthy person. These animals or insects are known as vectors. Okay, known as vectors. For example, vectors are houseflies, mosquitoes, bed bugs, okay, now, or in some cases mouse, or even dogs and cats can also be a vectors of a number of diseases. Okay, now diseases like malaria, okay, dengue, another is sleeping sickness, rabies, etc. are spread through vectors. Okay, are spread through vectors. Malaria is a disease that is caused by protozoa, but that protozoa is carried from an infected person to a healthy person by a mosquito, that is female Anopheles mosquito. Similarly, dengue is caused by a virus, but that virus is carried by mosquito again. That mosquito is Aedes mosquito. Similarly, sleeping sickness is a disease that is usually found in Africa, and it is caused by a protozoa. Okay, and that protozoa is carried. The vector of that protozoa is a fly. That name of the fly is CC fly. TSE fly. All right, and rabies. It is caused by a virus, but the vector of that rabies virus is animals like dogs, cats, bats, etc. Okay, so when that rabid animals means the animal which is infected by the rabies virus, when that rabid animal bites the human, then through the saliva of that rabid animal, the rabies virus enters the human body, and then the human beings also contract that rabies virus. Okay, so in this way, there are various animals that help in transmission of certain infectious agents, and those animals or insects, they are known as vectors. Okay, and finally the fourth one that helps in spread of infectious disease are viruses. Now, as you know, viruses, they cause a number of diseases inside our body, and those viruses are transmitted from one person to another person. Okay, so fourth one is through virus. So viruses cause a number of diseases. For example, disease like chickenpox and ringworm are transmitted by direct contact. If the person if the person infected with chickenpox comes in contact with a healthy person, then that person will get that disease. Okay, and sometimes diseases that are caused by virus, like disease like AIDS, okay, and syphilis, both these diseases are caused by virus. These are transmitted by diseases like AIDS and syphilis are transmitted by sexual contact. Okay, so these are the agents through which infectious disease spread. Okay, so now let us study about an important disease, that is AIDS. Okay, let us talk about AIDS. Now, AIDS is a serious human disease throughout the world, and the full form of AIDS is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Okay, very important, you have to remember the full form of AIDS. It is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS, AIDS. Okay, and it is caused by HIV, which means human immunodeficiency virus. Okay, so it is caused by HIV virus, and the full form of HIV is human immunodeficiency virus. Okay, it has been postulated that AIDS has been transmitted to the human population by monkey or chimpanzee. It may have been transmitted to the human population by a chimpanzee or monkey host in Africa, okay, during the 1960s. Okay, so it has been postulated that AIDS may have entered human population through monkey or chimpanzee. Okay, monkey or chimpanzee in Africa during 1960s. Okay. Now HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, HIV breaks the immune system, breaks the person's immune system, leaving the victim vulnerable to a number of infections, neurological disorders, and various forms of cancer. Okay, various forms of cancer. That means when a person is affected by AIDS, that means the person has HIV virus. Now, what does the HIV virus do? HIV virus actually attacks the person's immune system. Immune system is the defense system of the body. So it attacks that immune system, and when your defense system is weakened, then what happens is the person becomes victim to a number of other infections. Okay, since your immune system is not that strong, so you will contract a number of other infections. Okay, or you can also get a number of neurological disorders pertaining to the brain, to the memory. Okay, like depression and etc. Okay, and then you may also get various forms of cancer. Okay, so usually a person infected with AIDS usually dies of secondary infection. Okay, dies of secondary infection because, as I told you earlier, the person's self-defense mechanism is attacked by the HIV virus. For example, AIDS patient may die of pneumonia, or that AIDS person, the person infected with AIDS may die from a bone marrow infection or from skin cancer or many other such diseases. Okay, now let us talk about the symptoms of AIDS. Okay, how do we know that a person is suffering from AIDS? What are the symptoms? Are the change that we see in the normal functioning of the body. So what are the symptoms that gives away that the person is suffering from AIDS? Now, AIDS is a very dangerous disease. Why? Because during initial infection with HIV or with AIDS, the person shows no specific symptoms. Okay, that is why it is dangerous. Symptoms of AIDS. Okay. During initial infection with HIV, no specific symptoms arises. No specific symptom arises. Okay, कुनै यस्तो खालके symptoms चाहिँ देख्दैन. As the disease progresses, जति त्यो बिमारी बढ्दै जान्छ, as the disease progresses, the patient may develop symptoms like swelling of lymph nodes. Okay, swelling of lymph nodes, fever, headache, loss of weight, sore throat, loss of memory, diarrhea, unexplained fatigue. यताले थाकिरहेको किन थाकेको हो के unexplained fatigue. And then that person can suffer from depression, as I told you earlier, neurological disorder पनि हुन्छ. So depression, or that person may have rashes on the body. The body may develop rashes on the body, or the vision may be blurred. Okay. Persistent lesions on tongue and mouth, etc. Lesions भनेको चाहिँ घाउ, persistent भनेको चाहिँ हतपत जाति नहुने. Okay, continuously it remains for a long period of time. So initially there will be no symptoms. The person will be normal. He will look normal. There will be no symptoms in the body. But when the disease starts progressing, then the patient may develop all these symptoms in the body. Okay. Many patients, another very dangerous thing about AIDS is that many patients remain symptom free for 8 to 9 years. Okay, AIDS लागेको 8-9 वर्षमा पनि there will be no symptoms in many patients. Okay, during the last phase, that is after 10 to 11 years of initial infection, the person or the patient become susceptible to viral, bacterial, fungal, or parasitic infections, and may die of any such infection, and dies of any such infection. Okay, so since as I told you earlier, the immune system of the body has been weakened to such a level that now that person will contract so many infections in the body. Viruses will attack, bacteria will attack, and so he will get a number of infections, and then because of that infections the person finally succumbs. Okay, now let us talk about the modes of transmission. Now, as you know, as you are aware, that AIDS is a very dangerous disease, and plus it can be transmitted from one person to another person. So we have to understand how AIDS gets transmitted. So let us study about the modes of transmission of AIDS. Okay. Modes of transmission. How is AIDS transmitted from one person to another person? It is unprotected sexual intercourse with a HIV infected person. Okay. Next, Mode of transmission is use of contaminated shaving razor, needles and syringes. So we should never share needles, syringes with others. Okay. And through transfusion, sometimes what happens, a person may lose blood due to a number of reasons, like maybe in an accident or something like that, and that person needs to be given blood. That is known as transfusion. But if the blood is infected and if that infected blood is transfused to that person, then that person will get AIDS. Okay, so transfusion of infected blood. Fourth, transmission from an infected mother. If a mother is infected, then that will be transmitted to fetus. Okay, the baby that is developing in the womb. Okay, transmission from an infected mother to fetus during pregnancy. The fifth mode of transmission is breastfeeding. Okay, breastfeeding, when the mother breastfeeds the infant, then that also transmits the disease. Breastfeeding by infected mother to infant. Infant means the baby. Okay, to infant. And finally, the sixth one is through artificial insemination. Sometimes the sperm is directly injected into the uterus of the female, so that time also that is known as artificial insemination, and that also results in the spread of AIDS. Okay, now there are many rumors, many myths surrounding AIDS. Okay, if a person is infected from AIDS, then what do? We discriminate them in the society. We usually stay away from them. But you have to understand that they are also infected from a disease, and this disease does not spread through physical contact like shaking hands, by giving hugs, or by sharing telephone, etc. Okay, or it does not spread through utensils, it does not spread through meals, it does not spread through clothing. If you eat a meal that is being cooked by an AIDS infected person, then you will not get AIDS. Please remember that. Okay, and plus it does not spread through coughing or through sneezing, and it also does not spread through vectors like mosquitoes, house flies, okay, or bed bugs, etc. It does not spread through these vectors. So that is why, since AIDS does not spread through physical contact or through sneezing or through vectors, it spreads through blood transfusion, it spreads through breastfeeding, it spreads through sexual contact, it spreads through use of contaminated syringes, etc. So we should not discriminate people, those who are suffering from AIDS. They are people like us, they are suffering from a disease, and we should support them, and we should help them to come out of that disease. Okay, now let us talk about prevention, methods of prevention, how AIDS can be prevented. Okay, first is we have to educate people. Okay, educating people, because there are many people in our country who do not know about AIDS, who are not aware what is AIDS, how is it transmitted. So we have to educate people about AIDS and its transmission. How is it transmitted? So if people become aware about the disease, then it can be prevented to a large extent. Okay. Now next is by not sharing. We should never share toothbrushes. Okay, toothbrushes with anybody. Toothbrushes. Okay. Razors, shaving razors, etc. Okay. And we should always use disposable needles and syringes. By using disposable needles and syringes. Okay, disposable needles अनि syringes use गर्नुपर्छ. अनि फोर्थमा के भने blood transfusion गर्दा पनि AIDS सर्न सक्छ. So thorough screening of blood should be done. Thorough screening before blood transfusion. Before giving blood to anybody, the blood should be thoroughly screened for AIDS, and then only it should be transfused to another person. Okay. And World AIDS Day is celebrated on AIDS Day is celebrated on 1st of December every year. To make the people aware about AIDS, its causes, its methods of transmission, and its methods of prevention. Okay, with this we come to the end of today's class.